Hello and welcome back to the TNC podcast. We're doing this podcast just remotely because the coronavirus is still a thing, sadly, so we have to stay away from each other. But I'm delighted to be able to welcome Mr. Benjamin Bloom to the show today. We were just chatting off camera. The last time that me and Ben spoke on camera was before the Leeds United 1 Norwich City 3 game. And we'll get on to that in a little while. But it's been a long while since we spoke on camera. And I think you might not want to admit it, but you're everyone's favourite Ipswich fan in NR1. I've had loads of Twitter questions that we'll get onto a bit, kind of going on to that. So it's an absolute delight to have you back on, mate. First of all, how are you?
I'm just bored, Jack. I was so pleased when you DM'd me earlier. It was like, yes, let's talk some football for an hour or so. But in all seriousness, I work in education. My missus works in education, so we're absolutely fine. We've got food, we've got shelter, and we've been paid our April salary. I don't know how it's going to go going forward. But no, I was thinking as well. So weird. The last time we spoke, like you say, in a hotel before Norwich Leeds, and we still didn't know at that point whether you were the real deal or not. And then that performance and that night was just okay. Right. We get it now.
Yeah, people, it's the classic question, what's your favourite ever away day? And I'm sure you look back, down the times with Ipswich and you can pick out like one or two. That for me, that night was so special because Leeds were arguably the best squad in that division at the time. They had Bielsa. I was watching the Leeds documentary actually over the past few days. I've only just got round to it. There was so much hope surrounding that club at the time. And we went there, you were there, and we absolutely walked the park with them. It was one of the most complete performances since I think we played Middlesbrough at Wembley in the playoff final. So can you remember that night vividly? Can you remember what it was like sitting there?
Well, I remember the surprise of it. Obviously, I was outside from Ipswich lost in the last minute at home to Sheffield Wednesday just before the game, typically. So I'm going back and forth, and as you can imagine, I get praised for being balanced, but you can imagine the podcast I host, the WhatsApp group. It was all right. Tonight's the night. Norwich are getting found out. This is and. Everyone was watching on Sky, and I remember saying to Chris Gorham in a thing I did at the end of the season, that wasn't only the best Norwich performance I saw that was the best performance I saw. Maybe I saw Leeds derby after Spygate, and Leeds were incredible, but Norwich were absolutely brilliant, and they just tweaked the tactics slightly and just sat off a little bit, and I hadn't seen Buendia up to that point either, and oh God,
it was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Hell of a performance, and it could have been. I watched back a 10-minute clip of that. That could have been 5-0 that game.
Yeah, easily. It was such a peculiar game because the Pukki goal, everyone thought it was offside, so no one celebrated, and then no flag went
offside,
up.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, it was really odd though. But from where the angle we were, he looked a mile offside. Then Leeds started playing this weird white noise over the speakers when we were through on goal. It was just a really kind of peculiar night, but.
Jack, do you remember in the second half? Sorry to interrupt. I think was it Lewis or Aaron's clean through and missed one, and I think Pukki actually his only miss of the season. I think Pukki missed one. It genuinely could have been 5-0, and I just think, and you talking about the Leeds documentary, I think Elland Road is like Leeds' biggest strength and their biggest weakness. When someone turns up and raises their game, and that dynamic shifts around on Leeds. It's hard for them to play there sometimes, and that happened in May later when I was there with Derby County as well.
Definitely. I mean, we'll probably be back there soon in terms of the Championship, but them nights under the lights, big occasions, I don't think you can quite beat it. It's certainly for a club like Norwich in the Premier League, you don't get them kind of occasions anymore. So, I look back very fondly at that night. We also filmed a podcast on the morning of that game, and we spoke in depth about a certain Paul Lambert. Now, he'd joined. I didn't realise quite how early on in that season it was. You said it was about October, wasn't it?
It was late October. I think possibly just before an international break.
Okay, so Paul Hurst had been sacked. So you were in a fairly perilous position at that point. But the hope that Paul Lambert was going to come in, maybe not get you out of where you were at that point, but at least start playing some nice football. And even if you were to drop into League One, which of course did eventually happen, you would then come straight back up. What has happened, one at Ipswich and two with Paul Lambert, since that time that we last spoke over a year ago?
Well, it's so interesting to actually be speaking to you about it, because I remember we were chit-chatting and you said, oh, Ben, by the way, I've just done something with Gary Kaza. It's coming out. Have a listen to it. So you were all gung-ho with this narrative. Oh, was Lambert the front man for this? Was it the work of the whole team with Ian Culverhouse? And I remember very sarcastically answering you back saying, where's Ian Culverhouse now, Jack? Yeah. And you said, oh, he's manager of Kings Lynn or what have you. And
got promoted that season, by the way.
It's tremendously good. So you were already saying this is not the same Paul Lambert that was did that amazing job to do the 2 promotions at Norwich. And I was saying to you before we started that someone had tweeted the Simeon Jackson goal to get you guys promoted at Pompey in 2010, I think, and they cut to Lambert on the touchline. He looks so focused, so in control. He's just got his second successive promotion, and he just doesn't seem the same guy. In terms of what's gone wrong, I mean, he's a bit unfairly called PR Paul by some sets of Ipswich fans now. He did a brilliant job with Mick, where it got fractures between the fans and the management. He did a brilliant job. Some might say he sucked up to the fans, etc. He made the right noises. He did a brilliant job getting everything kind of happy and whatnot. But you know as well as I do that only lasts so long while you're not winning games.
Yeah.
Do you know what? We started off playing this sort of 4-3-3 type things, and he tried. You'll laugh. He tried to split the centre backs and drop a midfielder in, and it looked really good. And a lot of us are kind of disappointed that even if relegation was going to be a thing, that he didn't just stick with the plan. The plan. If anyone knows about sticking with the plan, it's Norwich fans, because you waited and waited and waited and waited, and then you played Middlesbrough in September last year. Pookie went up front. Rhodes got taken out of the team. Zimmerman came back, and it just needed that last thing to click. So he's tried lots of different things, literally every formation, every permutation you can imagine. There was a sense last year that the terrible, terrible recruitment that had happened with Webster and Waghorn going out, and then Hurst dropping Bielkowski, who's now brilliant in the championship game for Millwall. There was a sense that he got a pass because of the terrible recruitment. Fast forward to this season, and there's a bit of a sense in League One that you get a few months grace while teams are sorting themselves out, etc. And there was a bit of a sense that we had a squad of kind of lower level championship, upper level League One players. And I just remember going to a game in September against Shrewsbury, and Jack, I watch a lot of games and I've seen a lot of good football teams, and we won 3-0. And I went on my Blue Monday podcast and said, I don't get it. We're not good. I did not see a pattern of play. I saw Flynn Downs, who looked really good, and the 2 forwards kind of took their chances. And Shrewsbury had Steve Morrison playing for him, actually.
Okay.
Had a guy sent off, and it was just strange. I was like, where is the pattern of play? Where is this going? What is the system? Are we counter-attack? I don't get it. And lo and behold, I hate to say I was right, Jack, and maybe you were right as well in respects of whether Lambert's old school manager style of motivating and putting a team together and here we go works anymore. But yeah, they're not. I'm sure Norwich fans will be disgusted to hear they're not going to get promoted.
No.
What may. There's just I just don't see. I don't see what the plan is, and nowadays you need that, don't you? You really need. Where are we going with this, and what's the plan? So, I hate to say, you were probably closer to the mark in our last conversation than I was, ever the optimistic fan, but not gone well at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to sit back now and say, I'm not going to say I was right. I think most Norwich fans looked, and we were saying it out of hope than knowledge. But we'd also seen him fail at Stoke, at Aston Villa, blah blah blah. I know you can take positives out of all the jobs he's had, but he was never quite the same since he left Culverhouse and Carter. But the start of this League One campaign, you started very well, and there was a point where I think we were bottom, as we have been for the majority of the season. You were top, or certainly in the top 2 or 3, and it was looking like we were going to be back in the same division after a season, and we were thinking, how has this happened? Because we looked so good, you looked so poor, and now after just one campaign, we're probably going to be back in the same division. Now we will probably be back in the Championship, however the Premier League sorts and whatever happens after the cancellation of fixtures, etc. But what has happened since that opening 2-3 months where you looked like a really solid League One team?
Well, the first thing that's happened is the other teams have kind of got their stuff together, and you know that sense of system versus individual. I think our individuals carried us for the first few months. We've got better players than most of League One, but there's also your mate Paul Warne there who totally knows what he's doing at that level. Mark Robbins at Coventry, Carl Robinson.
It's a good top 6, actually, isn't it? A very strong top 6.
But the thing is, Jack, the bottom half is dirge. So what happened was we would go to Rochdale and win 1-0 because we've got better players. Shrewsbury'd get a guy sent off and we'd win 3-0. We beat Wimbledon in the last minute. I think it's a crazy run. We won 8 out of 9 or something, loads of clean sheets as well. But Ipswich have not beaten any team in, I think it's the top 8 all season. Okay. So when they come up against, and I remember it was actually Rotherham showing up, and they had what's his name, Big Michael Smith up front, and they've got a good centre half called Ehekwe as well. And
have you heard the Paul Warne interview that we did with him? Actually,
I haven't. No.
So I think his father had just recently passed away, and it was that night or evening or day, whatever, going to Portman Road. And he said, if you lose to Ipswich tonight, you cannot walk back in this changing room and look me in the eye. He said, I want one thing from this season, and that is to go out there and beat Ipswich. And he said his team put in one of the most complete performances. I haven't watched that game, but it meant so much to him that night. Like, Paul Warne is a massive Norwich fan, season ticket holder, blah, blah, blah. But that night meant so much to him.
Yeah, and it was one of those occasions. I think they scored their second goal on something like 50 to 60 minutes, and you're doing the same as me, vlogging during the game. And I remember saying, because you always hedge your bets so you don't look like a pillock afterwards. But I sort of said 2-0 Rotherham, confidently, that's game over. Yeah. That's done. And then we've seen it. And it's irked Ipswich fans as well when you see teams like Fleetwood. Joey Barton's Fleetwood actually. I know we're going to talk about Norwich playing against Kevin De Bruyne and whatnot, but Joey Barton's Fleetwood, sort of turning up and keeping the ball better and changing system during the game, and it's just there just doesn't seem to be some set philosophy and set idea of what we were going. Even when you guys were losing under Farker and finishing 14th, I knew what the plan was. I knew what the system was supposed to be, and I had an idea of where you were trying to go. And I think that's the trouble. And sadly, we've yet to be proved that Lambert's near the caliber he was when he took you guys up 2009, 10, 11. I think those are the right seasons, aren't they?
Sure. I mean, you speak about a plan there, and for me, I mean, I can only the only system I know really well is this Daniel Farker, Stuart Weber system, and it feels like for every Daniel Farker you need that Stuart Weber to implement the system to get recruitment. Is there the Stuart Weber type character at Ipswich to help Paul Lambert along?
I'm sure most of the 72 clubs would like a Stuart Weber type character. We got a chap called Lee O'Neill doing the job. Look, he's not Stuart Weber, obviously. If you look at Championship directors of football, with the 2 promotions now, he's the number one, the number one guy, isn't he? Really, there's no one better. They're trying to do that director of football thing. There's just always a bit of a sense where Marcus Evans is concerned, where you've got Delia and Michael saying to Stuart Weber, right, go go do your thing. We trust you. Whereas you've got presumably Lee O'Neill coming back, everything still filtering back through Marcus Evans. So how much power does Lee O'Neill have at Ipswich compared to someone like Stuart Weber?
Yeah.
Stuart Weber probably walked into that interview with no sense of cockiness, going, I just got Huddersfield promoted.
Yeah.
Huddersfield, with no parachute money. If you give me control, I'll do you a job. But if not, thank you very much. I'm sure there's 10 other clubs that will take me. So they're trying to do it, Jack, but I'm sure we'll talk about the rivalry. But sadly, over the past, 10, 15 years, since Lambert, really, that gap has just...
Massively. I mean, you spoke earlier, tagline, I hadn't actually heard it, PR Paul. And I remember the early days of him managing Ipswich, and he was dipping into his own pocket to pay for away travel for fans, etc., etc. It feels like, and I mean, I'm only going off Twitter opinion, and that's never a good idea, but it feels as if the fans have turned on Lambert now. Is there any way that he can save his bacon and turn this era into a positive one?
Don't know. I really don't know. It's so interesting you say the fans have turned, and I'm just trying to go back before the virus came, and I think
it feels a while ago.
Yeah, I think they probably. I remember going to because we'd lost going into the virus. I think lost 3-4 straight games possibly, and the home games as well, where teams are coming. And look. You and I, we don't need to tell the listeners, but we know what the comments will get if we don't. We know this is not important, football compared to the virus, but it came at a good time for Lambert. We've had a picture of Jack Lancaster tweeted today. He's now back fit again. Okay. So even the squad that comes back might be different. But no, I wouldn't say they turned Jack, but the general sense of suspicion that he's not the guy that took Norwich up. And I mean, you talk about Villa. He didn't do a great job, but Lerner wanted out for a couple of those years. And then I guess at Wolves, the faux son came in during while he was there and was sort of like, we don't want you. We're gonna throw a load of money at this someplace else. But I don't know if he can do it, Jack. I don't know. Whereas my hope was great, but sadly, I'm not sure whether he's going to be the guy to do it.
Okay, I mean, the one thing I can't quite get my head around, I feel like I'm quite good at getting opinions of both sides and trying to understand where the decision came from. The one thing I don't understand is that 5-year deal that was handed to him. Now, I know that I think there's breakout clauses, right? If you don't go up this season. But even allegedly, okay, you hope. Even so, you look at that and think, what? How has that come about? I mean, you were starting to lose fixtures, fans were starting to turn, and then the manager, who arguably is holding the cards, gets handed a nice monetary 5-year deal. It's like, just talk me through what's gone on there.
I don't know. One thing I'll say about Marcus Evans is generally, where players are concerned, generally the contracts are fairly well done, and players are guaranteed for an X amount of time, then with an option afterwards. So my only hope is that they'd come to some agreement, and without reading the contract, which I frankly probably wouldn't be able to, I'd need my lawyer sister to help me out with that. The only hope can be that he's gone to a more performance-related deal, like you've suggested. So whether they've gone, we'll give you a pay rise, but if you don't meet X, Y, Z criteria, or Evans is very happy with Lambert, and we know when McCarthy was there that Marcus Evans was very happy to just sit back and go, right, this guy knows what he's doing. Go on, run my club. He doesn't want to be there. He's proven that. He's got plenty of other business interests. He doesn't want to be there day on day. And allegedly, he's still not there day on day. So whether Mr. Lambert, one thing about Paul Lambert is he's a very, very good talker. We all know that, don't we?
Yeah,
so
he is.
Whether he's leading Mr. Evans a merry dance, I don't know. But Jack, I'm exactly the same as you. I don't get it. The contract was 3 years, and and again, without reading it and knowing what clauses have been put in, no, I cannot tell you why a manager with now a relegation, and you're right, just into that bad run. In fact, we just lost 5-3 at Lincoln. Excuse me, leaked 5 goals at Lincoln. So
it's crazy.
Can't tell you.
I think for me, when I saw that tweet, it was almost, you can't kind of breed that not negativity, but it was almost failure. It was starting to fail at that point. And once you reward failure, that's a really kind of negative spiral that you get yourself into. The one other thing I wanted to touch on, we've talked about Marcus Evans. We all know he's a very shrewd businessman. The one business that isn't running very well for him at the moment is Ipswich Town. I read an article on The Athletic a little while back. Now, I've forgotten the ins and outs.
Simon Hughes.
I think it was the Simon Hughes one, yeah.
I think there was a very handsome, long-haired, powerful guy quoted in that.
Was there? Sorry, I forget. I forgot.
No.
The financial reading is pretty grim, isn't it? I mean, talk me. You know that article better than anyone. You were quoted in it.
Yeah.
What was all that about?
It's a difficult one because Ipswich are fine financially until the second Marcus Evans says, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay. If at any point Marcus Evans decides to go, nah, not interested anymore, Ipswich are screwed. Right. That's the truth of it, because they obviously owe him an absolute ton of money. It's weird when you've got an owner and the club owes their money.
Yes.
It's kind of just money on paper, isn't it?
Yeah.
And unless someone's going to come along and buy the club. So you have a situation where the club owes Marcus Evans 90 million, add 10 million on every year he's there. So look, no one in their right mind is going to go to Marcus Evans, I will pay you £1 for Ipswich Town and I will clear your debts. So Ipswich will cost you 91 million. You can buy a championship club for, well, look, you could get Derby, who have got a nicer stadium, more central location, and a better squad of players for probably a lot less than that. So it's only perilous the second he says, I don't want to do this anymore, in which case, you could get... look at Ellis Short at Sunderland, where they got relegated into the Championship. He said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to take that parachute money and I'm going to cut my losses, and you're going to find another buyer. And until you do that, and by the way, down you go into League One.
Yeah.
So if Marcus Evans were to do that, Ipswich would likely end up then in League Two, without him writing the check. So it's perilous if he goes. That said, the ridiculous nature of football, if we come back in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, Ipswich win 7 of their last 9 games, fluke their way through the playoffs, you're back up in the Championship, off away we go again. It's so on a knife edge. What I will say is shrewd businessmen don't tend to take £90 million losses on stuff, but also shrewd businessmen know when to fold.
Yes. I mean, I suppose that begs the question after listening to all of that. We know that Marcus Evans isn't the most hands-on owner. Why is he doing it? It's costing him an absolute shed load of cash every year. To him, probably not that much, but still tens of millions.
10 million a year, yeah.
Why is he doing it?
Well, the obvious answer is when he took over in 2010, into the Premier League, take the TV money, have this massive worldwide asset if you're in the Premier League. We know the history he gave, and this was at the point when it wasn't 45 million to each of the 3 relegated teams, when a man of Marcus Evans, and it wasn't, okay, you can lose 39 million over 3 years on your FFP. So someone like Evans could make a difference there. And very, very sadly, he gave the money to Roy Keane, then he gave the money to Paul Jewell, who wasted it. Yeah. Then he employed Mick McCarthy, who got him into 6th spot without spending. On a shoestring, Yeah, on a shoestring. And it was like, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. And maybe I was a bit disingenuous, Jack. It's probably not 10 million a year. I think it was 6 to 7 million he was writing a check for each year in the Championship. Okay. But obviously, you can cut down the TV. There is no TV money in in League One, is there?
No.
Who's watching Accrington Stanley versus Ipswich on Sunday?
I watched it with great joy.
Accrington are the new Crew. In the late 90s, we always used to lose the Crew. Now we always lose to Accrington, yeah.
I mean, having talked about money, I don't want to get too in-depth with numbers because I think it sounds quite exciting in your head, but then when you listen back, it's just two men talking about kind of spreadsheets. But, so Kieran Maguire, The Price of Football, always puts out some really great stuff regarding football finance. And it came out today, I believe. I mean, I've only seen it today. The wages of last season's championship teams. And Norwich City's average wage, having won the Premier League, having won the Championship, was £23,795. So that's averaged across the squad. Ipswich Town's was 8,000, so a third. Aston Villa, of course, went up through the playoffs, was £44,150. When I saw that, I knew it was going to be high, not that high.
Oh my God.
And that's an average wage as well, which is bonkers. Now, I think it's worth saying that these numbers are post bonuses. So Norwich City wouldn't have been that high if we hadn't have got promoted. And we weren't probably chasing that promotion as hard as their numbers maybe show. But I think you've had a bit of back and forth with Norwich fans on Twitter today. Your argument was, and to be fair, you've always stuck with the line of, I don't think Norwich fans quite know how much money their club has in terms of a championship club.
Nailed it, Jack.
That kind of proves it, doesn't it?
It does. So look, and I say this coming from a position of great respect for Norwich and for what they've done. Norwich, in championship terms, are a financial colossus compared to Rotherham, Millwall, clubs of that nature. Yes, I take the argument that Norwich spent themselves into a utterly precarious position, and here we go with Naismith, Oliveira, all those huge contracts of players that didn't work. The contention I've had, and where I've picked on Norwich fans a little bit on Twitter, is at the back end of last season, I'm constantly seeing, this Norwich team cost no money. Remember when Closer came out of the team?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you could come up with this statistic where everybody was free. And I was sitting there banging my head against the wall because I was like, Norwich fans, what do you want here? Your team is brilliant. Look at them. Yeah? They get 94 points?
It was something like that, yeah.
Norwich were incredible last season and worthy champions. Best team in the league, and the table really doesn't lie on that. And there was just this sense that the Norwich fans were still trying to argue with me that they were some kind of financial heroes. And I'm like, no, you're not. Tim Closer cost 10 million, and the club that paid Gary Naismith 50 grand a week for however many years. Yes, Stuart Weber has inherited an absolute crap show of contracts and then done this amazing job. And yes, Maddison and Murphy gave the equivalent of parachute pounds. All my argument to Norwich fans is that if I were a Norwich fan, I would very proudly say that Norwich is not owned by a rich individual, and Norwich have managed for the last 10 years through a few brilliant promotions to either have Premier League TV money, parachute money, and the one year they didn't have that, they had the best English central midfielder at that level in the country playing for them, who they sold to kind of fill the hole. All my contention to Norwich fans is are you a big club or are you a little club? And it's like they're right slap bang in the middle of both. And don't be a little club when it suits you, and be a big club when it suits you. Do you know what I mean?
Massively.
Norwich in championship terms, financially, okay, they're not Aston Villa and they're not Newcastle or Leeds, in fact, with the commercial revenue. But Norwich in championship terms, compared to a Rotherham, for example, if Norwich played Rotherham, and I'd have to look at the squads, and had Tim Closer and Jordan Rhodes on the bench, I would suspect those two players' wages would pay for the entire Rotherham team.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth. So Rotherham are on this list, of course. Their average weekly wage was £3,600 compared to our.
You wouldn't get out of bed for that, would you, Jack?
I might just do a podcast for you and then call it a day there. But no, it's fascinating reading. I think me and Ben have both retweeted that, so it's over on our Twitter just to have a look at at the finances. I think it's probably a nice time now to get onto a few Twitter questions, Ben.
Let's do it.
So I tweeted out earlier. I haven't gone through these before, which is always risky. Always risky. Okay, let's go to John Hipkiss. How does he plan to keep his flowing locks in order during lockdown with no hairdressers to visit?
I have a haircut that will survive 3 months without being cut. The thing with long hair is once it gets past about there, no one notices whether it's there. It's people like yourself, Jack, who wear your hair short.
Well, I mean, I've never had a skin fade, which is all the rage at the moment, but it is kind of growing outwards. I've never seen this before with my hair. It's not growing long, it's just growing wide, which is a slight worry. Anyway.
But that's the least of my worries, and I do have my hairdresser Daryl. I do have on Instagram, so I can possibly I would not break protocol to sneak out for an unessential haircut. But no, least of my worries.
Good stuff. Okay, let's get to. Okay, I think you've probably a fairly generic question, but you have tried. How many of the 92 grounds have you done now?
Oh, of the 92, because I'm so old, Jack. A lot of them I went to original Arsenal and original Man City, and then
we'll count them.
My team never got into the Premier League for the next 20 years. So 50 or 60,
okay.
I guess.
So the question here is, other than Portman Road, what's your favourite ground that you visited?
Villa Park. Something special about Villa Park. Really love going there. And the favourite ever is Main Road. There's a couple of games there. I saw Ipswich win there in 98, 99 in the last minute under the lights. Saw Ipswich lose there, but there was just something electric about Main Road, I think. And you also, you'd park your car up and you'd have to give some scally mank kid £5 to not put dents in the side or whatever. So yeah, Main Road, I think.
Okay, good stuff. Rory, now we haven't really touched on what happens the rest of the season. He says, do you think there will be a deadline for the season to finish? Now, we've probably we've read every theory of how this season could possibly be finished, from World Cup styles in the arse end of nowhere to playing in the Midlands and sorting it. How do you see this season finishing? I suppose it's very different for a League One club compared to a Liverpool, or maybe not Liverpool, but a rich Premier League club, because on one hand you've got Liverpool, they might not win the Premier League, but they're going to be able to keep all of their staff in jobs and keep their players. For a club in League Two, maybe it's a situation of, will the club still be around if this season doesn't finish? So do you see this season finish as one? I guess is the question. And two, if you do, then how will it finish?
Well, and we should preface this by saying we're on a Norwich City channel, and the golden position in the whole of this is 20th in the Premier League, where Norwich are sat, and there is no team in world football that would have more to gain than a team that would be relegated from the Premier League and get to stay in there for another year, just in terms of that huge drop down.
Now, that was my opinion a few weeks ago. Surely we want this season to be sort of null and void to survive in the Premier League, when in actual fact, in terms of financial gain, we would be better off having the season finish and being relegated, because then the TV revenue still comes through, it gets paid as normal. There's risk of hundreds of £1 million not being paid up from Sky, BT, all of the rights holders, which then therefore means that clubs don't get the parachute payments, TV money. Financially, we would probably be worse off if we were to stay in the Premier League, which is bonkers, really. But
depending on how they decide to sort it out.
Yes.
If I'm Norwich though, and I've been promised X amount of TV money, I damn well want my TV money. Do you know what I mean? That's the long and the short of it. Also, if I'm an advertiser and I'm paying to advertise, I want my advert on Norwich versus Manchester United in the bit just before it kicks off and Martin Tyler says, and it's live or whatever. So look, it's a nightmare, isn't it? It's a nightmare for everybody. I think we all understand. The one thing you can't do is do any arbitrary. I mean, you've got Aston Villa, haven't you? You cannot relegate Aston Villa, Norwich, or who else in the bottom three?
Very good.
I don't know.
I can't even remember what football really feels like. Let me have a quick look while you talk.
you cannot relegate
This is awful.
a team or give a team a title or a promotion or a demotion without finishing the thing. We all understand that. So especially with someone like Villa who've got a game in hand.
Bournemouth.
Or Norwich could say, well, if we win 3 games out of 5 and draw 1, we might be out of it. So you can't for someone like Norwich, you can't relegate them without finishing it. I don't care when they finish it, as long as they finish it, I think is my thing. And like you were saying, I don't know, shut down Wembley, put bases in the hotels, and have one team go in at or 2 teams go in for a game at 12 o'clock and broadcast all of it or whatever. What I do know is the Premier League is kind of the start of the waterfall for everything. So it is the most important. Get the Premier League going, get something moving again.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do it. I think, like you just said, voiding it. Well, yeah. What do you do? Do you pay Fulham, Cardiff, and Huddersfield another 45 million quid year one parachute money and distort that league even more?
I know. It's such a legal minefield more than anything, isn't it? And as we all know, football clubs like to spend kind of a season ahead, don't they? So they would have spent money they haven't got. So if that money then isn't paid to them, then they're in a whole, an absolute load of trouble then.
Well, and I mean, this is the one good thing, I guess, from a Norwich point of view, is that you're in a plan and you're in a system, and you didn't. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about Norwich's Premier League kind of approach this season.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a big spend this season. We've seen the end of those huge contracts, and I think it seems obvious to everybody that the plan is to be sustainable over 3 to 5 years. And honestly, if we hadn't had the virus and you did come down and you kept 2 of Aaron's, Pukki and Buendia and Farke, why wouldn't Norwich score another 95 points in the Championship?
Yeah.
Collect the 45 million and be straight back up. The risk for me, if I was a Norwich fan, is the output of those 3 players.
Yes.
And even though the team was incredible, sometimes you don't know how important one player is. It's probably Buendia even more than Pukki, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you just never know that. Okay, you get 25 million for Pukki and sign another 15 million. You just don't know whether he was the guy that made that team tick, or you don't know, do you? So although you would think if Norwich did come down with parachute money and the majority of the 2018-19 squad, you'd think it would be a fairly straightforward promotion with the same management team and most of those
Sounds
players.
Simple, doesn't it?
It does, but I mean, look, we've just done a load of stuff on the Ipswich podcast, 99-2000, and there was the Charlton example where they did exactly that. They went up, they kept 90% of the team, and there was one point they won 12 games on the trot that season and just went straight back through. And I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are. I just identify that right hand side of Aaron's, Buendia and Pukki, and if you do go down, how many of those go, and how hard, even with all the money that's going to come for them, how hard is it to replace the output that those players gave in that system?
Yeah, massively. I think you probably lose Max, you lose Jamal on the other side, you lose Ben Godfrey from the middle, so that's the core of your defence ripped out. Buendia definitely goes. I think he definitely goes whether we stay up or go down. Pukki would probably stay. Cantwell goes, who's had an extraordinary season out of nowhere, really. Yeah,
Jack,
me too. Me
surprised.
too.
I looked at Godfrey, Aaron's, Cantwell, and Lewis, and I had Cantwell 4th out of
I mean,
those players.
It's crazy because Todd, obviously, he kind of had his breakthrough season last season, scored his first goal against Rotherham, but he was never convincing, I don't think. He had a few really nice performances. One at Nottingham Forest away sticks out. But he was always battling with Buendia for a spot. And there was a real key moment in the season. It came later on when Norwich were like there or thereabouts of promotion, and we were like, can we get automatics? It was still very much up in the air. Buendia gets suspended. Cantwell comes in the side, doesn't have his best few games, and the fans start to turn on him. And we had Cantwell on the podcast at the end of the season. We were up, it was all good, and he hadn't signed a new contract at that point. And I think there was doubt that he might not re-sign. He had an agent who was maybe pushing for a nice move somewhere. And I didn't think Todd would make that step up. He's quite small, he's quite, slender, he's not the biggest of chaps. And you look at someone in that position and think you need a bit more about you. And because he hadn't set the Championship on fire, you doubted whether that would be the case. But he had so much self-belief. Like, he would look you in the eye and tell you that he was getting in that Norwich Premier League team and he would shine. And like you, I didn't expect him to be having the season. But arguably, he's been better than Buendia. I mean, Buendia hasn't quite stepped up as much as some would have hoped. He's been fantastic, but he hasn't got the goals. Stiepermann, who was so crucial to the way we played last season, hasn't stepped up, has hardly played football. So it's been Cantwell, and he's rose to the occasion really well. But it's fascinating. I had him down the exact same as you, Max.
I thought he was going on loan, Jack, to Championship.
Yeah,
I thought he'd be at Derby or something. Derby took Kieran Dowell or whatever. I thought they'd take Cantwell. It does speak well for the standard of training at Norwich, though. If Cantwell can do. He's obviously a good trainer, and he's very surprised.
Going back to the start of this, so summer, we go up as champions. Did you expect us to approach that transfer window with a bit more gusto?
No, I think I expected it to go how it went. I kind of, the analogy I'd lose is if I drive down that road out there at 80 and I smash my car up, the next time I drive down that road, even though the limit's 70. I might just go 50 because I've got some bad memories of the last time I drove down it. Look, you were way ahead of the plan in even going up in the first place. I think, judging by what Kieran has tweeted today and the figures, there was still a long tail of liabilities on payments that need to be kind of cleared off. And Stuart Weber did an interview with Paddy Davitt that I listened to after you guys went up, and he said as much. He said, we can't do Jordan Rhodes at 30 grand a week or whatever. We're not gonna. It would be irresponsible. And I think I sometimes see Norwich fans saying, "Oh, we need to give it more a go. We need to give it more a go. 100 million TV money. We could at least, even a expensive loan player or what have you, and no liability going onwards." But I think if you come down with a load of cash in the bank, and now you say another huge asset in Cantwell potentially to bank, and the big caveat is that the team or the most important players or the soul or the intangible part of the team gets ripped up. I think there's no reason why it's very stable. You're going to sell loads of season tickets anyway, aren't you?
Yeah.
Should have a good season and you get back in there, and then you've got to. Then's the time where we add, and it's going to be a club record. What is your club record signing? And Bukhani?
No, he was only on loan. I think it's still Ricky.
Closer?
No, it's still Ricky Van Wolfswinkel, I think.
Wow.
8.5 million. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a club record signing, and then going back through. But no, I think you've got to be a bit sort of pragmatic about it if you're Weber, and say, look, okay, he's not going to sign Gary Naismith on 50 grand a week for 10 years or whatever happened, or Oliveira or what have you. But no, I kind of understood why they did that, and I think possibly it was you who said on one of the things, give the players that got there, at least give them a go, at least give them until January. And this is a weird thing about, from what I've seen Norwich in the Premier League, is that for lots of parts of the games they look absolutely fine.
Yeah, I know, convincing as well. Yeah, just
the bit of quality or the bit of experience that maybe the players will gradually get, and it would be okay still. And what I do admire is exactly the same thing. I see the centre halves taking the ball. I see because pretty much Norwich is hilarious. All out attack in 2018-19, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just attack. Every player comes on the ball, go. And I do admire I do admire that, and yeah. So I wouldn't. I can see why Norwich fans are like, oh, go on, sign somebody. But tell me who, tell me how much for, and where they go in the team, and which of those players they would
Definitely.
displace. You know.
I think the really frustrating thing for me this season is I had kind of resigned us to relegation after we lost to Aston Villa at home. I think it was 5-1 or something. We got absolutely mauled that day. We had something like 10 injuries. It was a couple of games after the Man City win. And I kind of said, I looked at the team and I said, we're very close to being good enough, but we're not quite there. And the thing that I think helped us so much in that championship promotion was naivety. We were young. A lot of the players hadn't had that championship experience, but we had the quality, and the opposition maybe wasn't quite as good. So you could get away with chucking 10 men in the other half's opposition and hoping you'll score goals. And we did score goals. We also conceded a lot of goals, and we gave up a lot of chances, and a lot of them chances weren't converted. This season, we've probably given up less chances, but the opposition's strike force is so much better. So it's that naivety helped us last season, hasn't helped us this season. But I've still really enjoyed this season. It's like, it's not just, you don't support a football club to just have that 90 minutes on a Saturday. It's all about what's the club trying to do. I think Stuart Weber is a big believer in leaving a legacy, and he said many a time that he will leave after this current contract is up. So he's got a couple more years and then he'll be off to go on to his next challenge. So he knows that he wants to leave Norwich in a financially stronger, positionally stronger position than what we were when he joined. And I think we will go down. Whatever happens, this whole coronavirus is throwing everything up in the air. But like you, we would go down financially strong with a fairly decent core squad, still selling 22,000 season tickets, which gives you that opportunity to go straight back up. And there is that clear division now, isn't there, between the Premier League bottom three and the Championship top four, and then the rest. We can't go into the top 10 probably of the Premier League. We don't have enough cash. But we're probably never going to dip too much lower than 6th, 7th in the Championship at the moment, because there's such a financial kind of difference, isn't there?
I look at it as you have your Champions League teams, and there's about 4 or 5 of them who are different level, and then commercially all around the world.
Yeah.
So they're in their own league. And then I see it as Premier League TV teams, so they're the next grade, and then moneyed Championship teams. So one's like Norwich with either assets to sell or parachute money.
Yeah.
And that's the thing Norwich have done well, is for a decade they've been in that third bracket, so Champions League, Premier League, or moneyed Championship. I think that's what they've done really, really well. And like you say, if Weber's playing the long game, he doesn't want to finish on a relegation from the Premier League, does he? Or I don't know, middling Championship team. But it's very, very interesting. And all I would always say is just look back to what Ipswich 12th, Leeds 13th, Norwich 14th at the end of that season.
Yeah.
Tackle goes in on Maddison at Sheffield Wednesday, 1 inch to the other side, and you don't sell Maddison.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, look at Middlesbrough now,
Yes.
where the parachute money ran out. You sell your Ben Gibson and your Adama Traore and whoever, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Even with Steve Gibson as your owner, it's hard. So I just think Norwich fans should probably look at it and think, well, look what you could have won.
Definitely.
And it's not so bad, is it?
It's not
5
too
promotions in 10 years or whatever it's been.
It's certainly been exciting. The one team we haven't touched on, and I know we've both watched a lot of them over the past couple of seasons, it kind of chucks all the theories about the Premier League hierarchy up in the air, is Sheffield United and what they've done. Similar kind of path to us, up from League One through the Championship into the Premier League. And for a moment, it looked like they had a chance of getting into the top 4. That's probably not going to happen now. But we kind of saw it through the Championship, didn't we? For me, they were the best team to come to Carrow Road. Even when Leeds beat us 3-0, Sheffield United looked a lot more compact. They had that energy. They just had something about them. And Chris Wilder's the type of manager that you hate so much that you'd love him to be yours, because he's
just a brilliant manager.
Yeah, he is excellent. And have you been surprised to see them go on to such dizzy heights this season?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I always think about Championship teams going into the Premier League of how set are you in your system,
Okay.
and I have to use the Ipswich example because obviously we spent 4 years losing in the playoffs every year, but basically winning 60% of our games every year. So
Yeah.
we had a very good team that didn't get promoted, and obviously year on year improved it. In we went and finished fifth. And what I would not like Sheffield United to do now is what we did, where all of a sudden you go, right, now we need to take it to the next level. And here comes Finidi George and Matteo Sereni on 10 times more money than everybody else. So that's what I'd not like to see. It's a bit weird, actually, because Leeds and Norwich were probably better football teams, weren't they, last season? And played that really continental style, whereas Sheffield United had the English grit as well, didn't they? They could dig in.
But
and
they still played some lovely football as well.
They did, yeah. And this obviously very innovative overloading thing that we've all heard
too many times.
Sick to death of hearing it now because we all saw this for 2 years before all these Premier League pundits did. But no, I'm very surprised that they've gone as high as they did. Honestly, I looked at it and you have this thought as an Ipswich fan of, God, what if Norwich do what we did when we went up? Really good side, nice and settled. What if they finish sixth or something? I would never, ever hit it. So in my head, I was like, well, Norwich have changed nothing. They've got a very good team. But I think you've hit the nail on the head where the style that Sheffield United have, where they're able to do 20 minutes without the ball, has suited them better in the Premier League, seemingly, than... Because I went to the Norwich-Sheffield United game, and I thought you were... Oh, I've said Premier League, and Syria's decided it wants to tell me there's no... No, I went to Norwich-Sheffield United, Jack, sorry, and that was one where you could have been a couple up at half-time, and you were leading at half-time. And it just felt like Sheffield United could weather your storm for longer than you could weather their storm.
Massively.
And like you say, maybe people like Godfrey, he's only played 40, 50 Championship games in his life, and he's against Aguero and these people, and it's like, well, of course he's gonna have a few difficult games. But no, I have been surprised by Sheffield United. I don't know who I thought would finish higher out of the three of you.
Sheffield United, according to the bookies, they were basically odds on to go. Well, they were odds on to go down this season, so they were the favourites to go down. I thought they were going to have a good season. I thought we were going to have an okay season. I must admit, I think that patch.
I didn't think you would be bottom, Jack. Honestly,
no. I think that what really killed us was that period, about a month, 6 weeks, where we had so many injuries. And look, most teams have injuries throughout the squad, and there have been. Bournemouth have had the same. But we had it really bad, and I don't think we've been good enough this season. I think we would have gone down anyway. But that point, we'd won a couple of games, we'd beat Newcastle, beat them convincingly, we'd beat Man City, and then to get Zimmerman out, Kloses out, there was literally the whole core of our squad had been ripped apart. So that was really unfortunate. But it's been a good season. We're approaching an hour now. Have we got anything else to add? Any? I guess I tell you what. My question here: we might catch up again in a year's time. Who knows? Hopefully it'll be sooner. Where are Ipswich Town in a year?
Well, hopefully in a year's time. I can't say hope. I can say hopefully Ipswich will be very high up in League One, and you would think Norwich would be in the top two, or at least the top three of the Championship somewhere, given all the caveats we've said about Farker, Weber, Buendia, Aarons and Pookie. Jack, I don't care if Ipswich are not even in the top six in League One. I need to see a bloody plan. I need to know what's happening, who the team's built around and where it's going, rather than... Because you had this nightmarish thought earlier in the season... we are going to go up and we're going to go into the Championship and we're going to be the worst team the Championship has. I'd rather not go up, and you'll come down and we'll lose another 2 games to Norwich.
Sounds great.
Sounds awful. Do you know what I mean? I'd rather they built, and it sounds rather selfish. Given we have got a cash-rich owner, we're not one of the teams at risk in League One. Obviously, it's not nice for him. It's costing him millions and millions.
He's got enough.
He has a lot.
Yeah.
He has a lot. I don't know whether he has enough, or whether he chooses to spend enough. But you would hope that for both and we always come at our podcast from a position of respect, don't we, Jack? You would hope for both teams that Norwich would be in their plan without having the guts of their team ripped out, and nicely stable in the bank, lots of people at the stadium. Hopefully build up that bloody tiny stand as well. I know. That's the key to, you need 30 to 40,000 in there to be a
that would be Weber's legacy. Even if we're in League Two, just finish this, just get a stand up there. We want nothing else, Stuart. Sell the squad.
But I would hope that Ipswich are on the up climb of a plan, and it just not. I think they're just hoping to barge through some kind of promotion and then work from there. Which, given the examples of Sheffield United and Norwich and Brentford and Bristol City and your old mate Alex Neil, who you were right about as well, actually at Preston, it needs more thought and more intelligence than the old Brian Clough. I know Brian Clough's a genius, but I can get together a squad and win the European Cup. You can't do it anymore.
No, it's fascinating. I just love how jealous you are of Stuart Weber. That makes me really happy inside.
He's amazing, isn't he?
He's a top man. I'm going to really miss him.
Where do you think he'll go? And do you think if the Manchester United thing did open up, that he'd be able to turn it down?
Yeah, I do actually. I think he could turn it. I think the next step for him, having I've listened to him speak for hours and hours on end. I think it's going to be a Dortmund or a club like that. Something with a real culture about them, a project. I think he's quite keen on moving.
How old is he, Jack?
He's still young, I think. Early 40s, I think. Yeah. Complete guess. Might have overshot that. I'm not sure, but. Yeah, he is very, very good. To be fair, if we need to balance this out, the recruitment this season hasn't been good enough. The loan deals have been incredibly poor.
I think there was a bit of credit built up from last year's recruitment.
Yeah, exactly. But in the Premier League, has he got the recruitment right? Probably not. So
just answer me this as well, Jack. Do Farker and Weber now go as a pair wherever Weber goes next?
That's really interesting.
Because whatever you say about Weber, Jack, the way that team played was down to Farker.
It was,
and they were brilliant.
It was, and all of the players give masses of credit to Farker in terms of off the pitch as well, and the way he trains and everything. I don't think they do go as a pair. I think there'll be a load of mutual respect, but I think Weber's clever enough to pick out another 10 Daniel Farkers if he needs to. And I think if he was to go to a club, he wouldn't just want to replicate what he's tried at Norwich City on a bigger budget. I think he'd need to headhunt someone who really fits another club. So no, I don't think they do, but it'd be marvellous if they do go as a pair. That'd be good fun.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, anything coming up? What content are you filming at the moment with no football to talk about?
I'm trying my best. So
it's tough, isn't it?
There's nothing to talk about. So I'm doing sort of championship stuff and some live streams and some top tens. And obviously at this point, I'd like to say hello to all the Norwich fans who have kept subscribing and maybe see you again next season. So don't unsubscribe. And as always, we come from a position of respect, and it doesn't matter that I'm waving this Ipswich scarf up here.
Snuck it in there,
always respect for every club, really.
Massively.
Every club is great to its supporters, isn't it?
Massively. You know what I mean? That's why I always love you getting on and watching your stuff. And I know a lot of Norwich fans watch your stuff, and I'm sure they're very vocal.
And apologies to the ones I've been winding up on Twitter.
Anyway, mate, thank you so much. Stay safe.
My pleasure, Jack.
Let's do more of these over the coming months, because I don't think there's going to be much football for a little while. So head over to Ben's channel. I'll link that in the description. Subscribe, say hello, and we'll see you for another TNC podcast very soon. Bye-bye.